Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the eCommerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. And I'm here with my mate Kevin Zaw, and he's got a good agenda lined up for our mentorship session today. So I'll hand the microphone over to you, Kevin, and let you fire away.
I appreciate it. So my first question is what your thoughts are on the Shopify Roblox partnership.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I almost put it into the same bucket as the recently expanded and announced partnership with YouTube, right? Their YouTube creators partnership. So the YouTube recently, or Google announced on behalf of YouTube recently that they've expanded their partnership with Shopify so that they can basically almost any qualifying merchant that runs Shopify Plus, I think Advanced and Plus actually, now qualifies. It was a small beta program historically where Shopify merchants could collaborate with creators on YouTube and everybody would share in the success of anything that got sold via that creator's content. So the whole idea behind this collaboration is to make it easy and seamless for creators to find products to feature in their content. So basically, they have a massive catalog of products to select from that they can promote, they can unbox, they can try, they can test, they can create content around. And then they can effectively tag those products in the experience. And then if someone follows that experience through and actually completes the purchase of the product, then part of the success fee, basically, of that purchase, part of it goes to creator, part of it goes to YouTube, right? And so the idea behind this is to make it easier without having to go through, say, for example, through an influencer marketing platform or an influencer marketing marketplace. It's basically YouTube partnering up with Shopify to make goods available from Shopify merchants easily to creators to promote, basically is the idea behind it. And so I feel like Shopify is doing a lot of these deals because at the end of the day, they realize that TikTok Shop is gaining massive amounts of traction. They realize that Instagram and Facebook is trying their damnedest to do commerce via their Shops engine. They've failed pretty miserably. And they also realize that Google has been trying for decades to do commerce and hasn't really figured out how to do it. They're lost. Apart from Google Shopping, they really don't have anything to do with commerce apart from marketing, right? So everybody markets through Google, but nobody uses Google itself for commerce. And so I think Shopify sees this and they're like, the more partnerships we can do where we are the catalog engine of choice across every single shoppable moment, the more entrenched we will become, even if we're only the back-end catalog engine and people only use us for that and they don't really use us. Maybe they stand up a Shopify website for D2C, but they don't really want to sell through it, but they use us as the catalog and order management engine. Because I actually see that a lot. I see a lot of brands that, for example, want to sell on Amazon, but they don't have an easy way to get their catalog into Amazon, and the out-of-the-box integration between Shopify and Amazon is really feature-rich. And so they load up all their product into Shopify. They create all the variants. They create all the content, the descriptions, the images, the videos, the attributes, all that sort of stuff. And then with that out-of-the-box mapping engine and also many third-party omni-channel integration engines, there's 30 of them. If you go to the Shopify App Store, there's 30 omni-channel integration platforms that work with Shopify and then integrate you to all the marketplaces, all the social selling channels, etc. And they also integrate you automatically with shopping comparison websites, even if they're non-transactional. So they integrate you with all the transactional and non-transactional websites where you need catalog data. And so a lot of people are using Shopify almost like a PIM and an order management system. So when the order is placed on, say, an Amazon, it gets pulled back into Shopify for fulfillment, right? Or at least they only integrate Shopify to their ERP and all digital orders come via Shopify, even if the transaction takes place on another platform. So I can see where Shopify's logic is going with this, which is we want to be the sales engine, the transactional sales engine of choice for all digital transactions, no matter where they happen.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a crystal clear and critical part of their strategy moving forward.
Interesting. I didn't realize there were so many partnerships with Shopify. I think what I find really interesting about the partnership they have specifically with Roblox is the idea that video games can be a platform for commerce where I never played Roblox before, but I assume that the vision is that when I'm, playing that video game and there's a particular item I'm interested in purchasing in, that's basically like the store for me, that physical storefront where I can look at it, test it out, and eventually make a purchase for it. And I feel like this could be a beta test for other video games to potentially be e-commerce platforms within themselves, where maybe in Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto, I see a particular shirt I like, so I'm going to purchase that in real life. So I think it's the funniest thing.
I wouldn't be surprised if Shopify did a deal with, say, for example, Netflix, because Netflix has their own merch store, and for some select items that are visible in a movie, you can then go buy those from the merch store. But that's always branded merch for that particular movie. Say, for example, let's say it's a movie and, I don't know, the lead male character wears this cool leather jacket that's uniquely styled for that movie, and that's one of his hallmark pieces of clothing. Sometimes they will take that, they will have replicas of that product made, and then they'll put that in their merch store, and it'll be branded with that movie's. It'll be like that category of product will be in their merch store. But what they don't have yet, and I'm shocked that they don't, is just a running ticker at the bottom of the app as the movie plays with every single visible item in the screen purchasable. If the two main characters are in a living room and there's a badass couch behind them, why wouldn't that just be in a ticker at the bottom of my app screen to where I can click and buy that thing?
Yeah.
And with an integration with Shopify and with machine vision, machine learning, and AI, they could actually do that in real time. So long as they were connected to all the Shopify merchants out there with these millions of SKUs, they would be able to find something that matches what's in that scene very closely and very quickly. And in fact, they could actually run an index across that content, so it's pre-indexed. So it's not actually finding it in real time. It's indexed, it's hot-spotted, and then automatically, and then that ticker is refreshed, say, for example, every 24 hours and re-indexed every 24 hours to find the most appropriate products that match those scenes. And I think Shopify would be the perfect partner for that, because now you have access to all the merchants that run Shopify to try to match products to. And Shopify takes a cut, the merchant makes the sale and fulfills the goods. Netflix takes a cut for sending the traffic their way. It's a match made in heaven. I see many more deals like this coming down the pipeline for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like the future of commerce, essentially where anything can be like a commerce store, right? So if you're watching a movie, like that can be a commerce store within itself. It's super exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I oftentimes see things in movies. I'm like, damn, I would love to buy that. You see that lamp on the shelf over there? And I'll pause it and I'll try to zoom in on it. I'll be like, that lamp is badass. I would love to know where the movie got that lamp. And I would love to have that in my office, for example. Or, oh, that fish tank that's shaped like a guitar or whatever it is, right? There's all kinds of things I see in movies where I go, man, I would love to have that in my house, right? But then you'd have to try to Google it. You'd have to start by saying, okay, maybe this movie, this timestamp, this item, try to find it, or try to go to Reddit where people are talking about these kinds of things. Oh, I found it over at IKEA or whatever it is. Like, it's just so hard. There's so much friction that I usually don't hassle with it, even if the thing is really cool. If I can't easily find it on Amazon super quick with one search, then I won't make the purchase. And yeah, I think that commerce everywhere is definitely going to become an increasing thing over the next decade for sure.
Yeah. So I think you touched upon this already, but one of the questions I had for you was around your thoughts around TikTok investing more into the e-commerce part of it, the TikTok shop. Do you feel like it's been pretty successful? Because from my perspective, right, like it feels pretty successful to me.
And they're rolling it out in more countries and enabling it in more countries. I think eventually it also becomes a full-blown payment engine. I think everybody out there who has a content platform wants to figure out how to tap into the bloodline of the transaction, just like Shopify has. Over 70% of Shopify's revenue today comes from payments, right? It doesn't come from subscriptions. It comes from payments, because with Shop Pay, they clip the ticket on their own payment gateway. And now it's effectively under the bonnet, it's Stripe, but like 70% of their revenue comes from clipping the ticket on transactions through their platform. Only 30% comes from subscriptions, professional services, revenue, and the like. So the reality is Shopify is actually a payments company masquerading as an e-commerce platform. The only reason they've got an e-commerce platform is to get their payments infrastructure into more merchant environments, which is why you've seen a recent announcement by them to say that they're making Shop Pay available off platform. So if I want to integrate the Shopify payments infrastructure into almost like a buy with Prime kind of experience, I can now do that. And so I think that everyone else is trying to figure out how to do the same bloody thing. They're going, man, we have to figure out a way to own the payments infrastructure and the digital wallet infrastructure behind this, not only to make it more seamless for the customer, but so that we can clip the ticket on every transaction. So think about this. Obviously, if TikTok is its own payment gateway and its own digital wallet, where I can either load up money in advance into my digital wallet and have a credit outstanding to buy things on TikTok, or they already have my payment details, they store my credit card number, they store my shipping address, they store all that stuff, and I can check out 100% directly within TikTok, and TikTok clips the ticket on that payment that goes through the platform, they will have a real game changer on their hands in terms of revenue. There's diversification. So I charge people to list products, I charge people to advertise, and I charge people to put the transaction through our infrastructure. Genius, because we've got the eyeballs, right? So I see everybody else wanting ultimately to do the same thing, which is to own the payments layer, because then you're tapped directly into the bloodline of the transaction. You're not just a marketing engine anymore. You're not just a sales engine anymore. You're a transactional engine. And that's, I think, where everybody wants to get to.
So another question I had for you, I guess outside of commerce, but what's been your experience when it comes to going from being an individual contributor to being a thought leader in industry? I think you made a post about it on LinkedIn, but I wanted to expand upon that because things a lot of people that become senior in the roles, you've become a thought leader in the B2B commerce space.
Yeah, look, I think for me, it was essential. It wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do, although I do love the sound of my own voice. And I'm not shy, and I love helping people, and I love seeing people in our industry get better at their job. And I am an absolute hardcore believer in the fact that a rising tide floats all boats. And so basically, if we as a hive mind can share our knowledge more effectively and more efficiently, then it's going to create, it makes a bigger pie for everybody. It creates more job opportunities. It creates better customer experiences. It creates more consulting opportunities. It creates more agency opportunities. Just in general, it's like a flywheel, right? If I can contribute to the flywheel, then it ultimately, in the long term, will create a bigger pie, which means more opportunity for me to do more business. And so that's how I've always approached it, is why would I want to hide my light under a bushel? Some people look at their knowledge as something that is proprietary to them, and therefore that's what makes them employable. Meaning that, okay, if they want to get my unique knowledge, they got to hire me, and they're going to have to pay me $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year to get it. And if I go out there and I share all my knowledge, then all of a sudden it's not unique to me anymore. And all of a sudden now they can hire somebody more junior who can learn all this stuff, and then they can replace me with somebody half my fee, right? But I guess for me, because I always had the idea that no matter what happens, if I have good intent, then I'll always be able to make a living in this industry. If I'm good at what I do, I have good knowledge, and I have good capability to execute on that knowledge, not just talk about it, but if I can help brands actually do the thing based on experience. And that's why I feel like my experience as a retailer and working within retailers as an e-commerce manager, and as someone who led the deployment and replatforming of heaps of different technologies, ERPs, CRMs, PIMs, e-com, because I've done the thing, and because I've managed those projects internally, and I've helped the business with change management internally, and I've been at the pointy of the spear of projects that ran from 1 to 3 years, and I know what that looks like, and I know what project fatigue looks like as an implementer, not just as a consultant or not just as an agency, but actually inside a business that has to do the changing to adopt that new technology and deploy it within the business and test it and train on it and continue to be an evangelist for it inside the business to get high adoption internally and externally. I think that gives me a really unique vantage point. And for me, I think that's what makes my consulting better than someone who's only ever been a consultant, for example, has never actually done the thing. That's the first thing. But secondarily, I really am a big fan of sending the ladder back down again. because I feel grateful for all the people that sent the ladder down for me. Like when I was at the beginning of my career and I was surrounded by people that were way smarter, way more experienced than me and knew way more stuff than me. And they, at different times in my career, have taken me under their wing. They've helped me. They've mentored me. They've shared knowledge with me. We've talked about things. We've had hard discussions and good banter. And I just feel like it's incumbent upon me to send the ladder back down again. And that will leave the industry in a better, hopefully the goal is to leave the industry in a better place than what I found it, because it's been so good to me and it's allowed me to live a life that I could have only dreamed of 24 years ago when I entered this industry. I couldn't have dreamed where I would be today. I couldn't have dreamed that I'm going to be in Florida talking at B2B Online, and I'm going to be I'm going to be the chairperson for the first entire day of B2B Online, talking from the stage and having conversations with people that I could have only dreamed that I'd ever be able to have conversations with. This is like literally a dream. I'm traveling around the world. I'm speaking in webinars and at events, and I'm going to meetups, and it's just so fun. Like I'm at the super fun part of my career now. I haven't obviously made all the money I'm going to make. I still need to work, and I still need to consult, and I still need to make a living, but I have set myself up from a career perspective to hopefully provide so much value that me and my services and my knowledge and my willingness to share will always be in demand. And at this point now, with my own consultancy, I'm able to monetize some of that hard-won experience. I'm able to monetize that now as a consultant. I'm able to, hopefully within the next 5 years, hopefully my content can actually constitute 50 to 90% of my income. That would be the dream. That would be the total dream. But you have to just keep putting in the effort until you achieve that outcome. Maybe I'll have to be at 1,000 episodes, say, for example, of my podcast before my podcast is well known enough to be like the primary income driver of my life. I don't know. Maybe it's 1,500 episodes. I don't know. That's the whole thing about it. You just don't know until you do the thing. And so that's why when Gary Vee told me, just start creating content, you will not know. When you start out, you will have no idea which good things will come out of that process until you do it. Like, he can tell me the good things that's come out of making content for him, but that doesn't mean that me putting out content will lead to the exact same outcome. It might be different outcomes. It might be equally good outcomes, but they might be unique to me. And so that's where I think all the best creators that I listen to and I follow, like, they've blazed their own path, right? And what success looks like to them is very different in many cases what success looks like to me. I get a kick out of, I genuinely love my industry and the people in it, and I want them to be successful. And I'm willing to do everything in my power to try to help make that a reality for them. And that's just me showing gratitude for how well the industry has treated me. Hey, if that turns into a revenue stream of its own right, great, fantastic. But just having these kind of conversations is what gets me up every day. I love this. I love talking to people that are geniuses in their sphere of influence and in their particular experience set. Like, that still fires me up. That still revs me up. I still learn something new every single day through the conversations I get to have. And I was only really able to start having those conversations at scale once I had a pretty big content machine up and running with a good flywheel behind it. Because as I've told you before, if you're not known for your content, if you don't regularly produce content, if you don't have a podcast or a webinar, or you're not regularly putting content out on LinkedIn or Reddit or any one of a number, or Medium or whatever, if you are not known for your content, then people assume, if you want to have a chat with them, the natural assumption, it makes sense, they think you're going to try to sell them something. But when you are known as a creator in your space, then they don't automatically have the assumption that you're going to try to sell them something if you slide into their DMs and say, hey, look, I'd love to get you on my podcast for a chat about this thing because I saw your post on this. It was really interesting, and it seems like you really know your stuff. Could you come on the podcast to talk a little bit more in depth about this? And it opens doors to conversations that it's just hard to have happen unless you're at an event. The only other way it happens is if you're at an event and then maybe you go to an after party where everybody lets their hair down, they've had a few drinks, they're having a dinner, it's a more relaxed, intimate environment where they're not being recorded, and they really start to let their guard down and you can have some of these intimate conversations. But outside of that, it is really hard to foster relationships with new people in the industry without coming across as a salesman.
Did you feel like you were able to have that type of freedom to do that in your own consultancy? Because I imagine that if you work for a company related to your field, producing content about your own field can have some challenges. But is that something that you've experienced?
It was one of the reasons that I decided to go out on my own again, because it definitely at times created a little bit of internal friction because when you're employed by someone, they expect the fruit of your labor to accrue to them and only them, usually. So at best, usually an employer will tolerate your content efforts, but they will rarely out and out support your content efforts, right? Unless you are a content person inside the business as a digital marketer that's meant to be making content on behalf of the business, then that's a different story. But in my roles, I was never working in marketing. I was never working in the content production side of the business. So my content was always for me, under my brand name, under my personal brand, underneath my personal channels. It wasn't underneath the business brand or channels. And so it definitely will usually lead to friction somehow, some way, somewhere. They will feel, rightly or wrongly, that you're either taking time away from your work that you shouldn't be, or that you're mentally or emotionally distracted with this content thing instead of thinking about the business. Or you might say something in a way that could, in the right circumstances, reflect poorly on the brand. So for example, I swear. There's no two ways about that. Like I try to keep it to a minimum in my content, but I'm a swearer, right? And the reality is that some of these brands and some of the ones I've worked with, they don't like that. They don't like the fact that if I swear and I'm known through LinkedIn to be an employee of this company or this brand, they don't want that to reflect on them. And so just something as simple as that, as being somebody who swears, and then that bringing a bad image to those squeaky clean brands that sometimes they think they're squeaky clean. Even if the founders and owners swear themselves, for example, they want to portray themselves as squeaky clean in the industry. So yes, I have absolutely had situations where I wasn't necessarily flat out told, don't do this anymore, but it was definitely, let's have a conversation around this. How much time is it taking you? How much time are you committing to it? Is it something that you should be doing inside the business as the face of the brand? Is this something and the bigger discussion and the harder discussion has always been, are you building a personal brand because you want to leave? Is that why you're doing this? Are you creating content so that you can do your own thing? Is that why you're doing this? What's the ultimate goal here with your content? Why are you even doing this? And if you're going to leave, like, when are you thinking about leaving? Is it sooner? Is it later? What's the deal here? So that's probably the harder conversation, because I knew even 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, when I first started doing content really seriously, I didn't have a grand plan. It wasn't like I thought, oh, cool, if I make great content in 6 months' time, I can leave my full-time job and I can go and make content for a living. There was no grand plan. Now, I had some back-of-the-mind ambitions that if I could become a really good thought leader that was genuinely contributing to the conversations happening in our community, that maybe those kind of doors would open up. Maybe at some point I can monetize content, some point way in the future. Maybe at some point people want to advertise on my content on a podcast or whatever. But at that point, when I first started, I didn't even have a podcast when I first started out. It was more like, I need to exercise the content muscle, because by the time I have an audience that wants to listen to what I have to say, I want it to be of high production value. I want it to be of high impact. I want it to be of high quality, etc. And I was like, I got to start somewhere. Like, I got to start writing. I got to start speaking. I got to start getting my content out there so I can exercise the muscle. And then, at that point I had 100 followers on LinkedIn or something stupid like that. And I thought, as my ability grows and as my content gets bigger, my audience will grow probably about the same rate, so that by the time I've got a decent sized audience, hopefully by that point, my content is on point. It's got a few key pillars that I speak to regularly that I'm really confident about based on my experience, and hopefully I can pass that knowledge on. And yeah, look, you raise a very good point. It is a hard conversation to have with an employer around content. There's just no easy way to have that conversation unless that business is already in support of its team members being out there, building a personal brand, doing all those things, because I believe that it actually makes your employers better employees. It makes your employees better workers. It helps them develop skills and interests outside the business. It helps them make friendships outside the business. I just think that any business that doesn't support creators within the business, let's put it this way, Businesses need more creativity in them, not less. And anytime people inside your business become creators and exercise that creative muscle, it makes them better at their job. I genuinely believe that. What's that saying? There's a famous saying. I'll probably butcher the saying, and I'll probably have to come back and talk to you about it again. But what does it say? The saying goes something like this. What happens if we train people so well? What if we pour a bunch of effort into them and we train them well and then they leave? What happens if you don't train them well and they stay? That's worse, right? So the way I look at it is there's always a risk, always, no matter what you do, there is a risk of your best people leaving the business. That is always going to be the thing. The people that will stay and don't feel like they've got any other opportunity and don't ever apply for other jobs, etc., are like your B, C, and D players. Your A players are probably always at risk of leaving no matter what you pay them and no matter what you offer them, because eventually they'll probably want to do their own thing. And the reality is usually it's your A players that want to go out and create content and build a personal brand. So it doesn't matter, right? Train them, encourage them, support them, make sure that they're doing good things out in the world, and really just give them some very high-level loose guidelines around what they can do on company time, in the office, in office hours, using company property, that kind of stuff. Maybe give them some loose guidelines. But other than that, I say fucking let them go at it, because it is going to make them a better human being. It's going to make them a better communicator, and ultimately it's going to make them a better worker.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think that this topic is going to be a lot more prevalent in the next few years. I think it's prevalent now just because there seems to be a rise of LinkedIn influencers, like a B2B influencer. And I wanted to bring this topic up to you because, from my perspective, I think you're very much a LinkedIn B2B influencer in your own space. Yeah, I think the trend of these new LinkedIn influencers is only going to rise the next few years.
Yeah, and I think it's something businesses are going to have to, if they want to continue to hire A players, they're going to have to court them. And one of the things that's going to be attractive to an A player is the freedom to be creative outside of their day job. Like, that's going to be a real important thing. Just like working from home is an important thing for A players, and having the flexibility of working from home, maybe 1, 2, 3 days a week, or maybe even full-time working from home. That's a really attractive thing to A players in today's day and age, to have the freedom and flexibility to work from home. I think the ability to be creative outside of work hours is also going to be massively attractive. So if you have a formal policy on creators working inside your company and what they can and cannot do, and basically just have that be the most unlimited set of restrictions possible within, that is going to be very attractive to employees, where they can say, look, I can exercise that creative gene, I can exercise that creative muscle, but I can also have the security of a day job that pays my mortgage, pays my car payments, pays for my kids' school. I've got the consistency of working for a big enterprise, an Oracle, whatever, a big, huge enterprise company. I've got the safety and security of working for a big enterprise company, but I still can scratch the creative itch at the same time without it threatening my job. And I think that is going to become an increasingly attractive thing to A players moving forward. I'm on one of our mentor sessions here with Mr. Theo Burns, and he's got a great agenda lined up for us today. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to him, and he's going to smash me with a few good questions. So over to you, Theo.
Appreciate it. So yeah, a bit of a chunky agenda today, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm starting off here. Just started the new role as with Big Blue, a 3PL. I will be heading partnerships for the UK region, which is really exciting. Come in these 2 weeks and trying to look at what we're doing partnership-wise at the moment. One of the really impressive things has been like cross-functional buy-in. Like, I'm in the Paris office at the moment, which is about 100 people, and we're getting everyone together. Everyone's really engaged with partners. And when we put in the Slack channels, hey, we've got this new partner that does X, Y, Z, people are like, cool, I've got merchants that need that. So that's a great start. I guess my first question for you, Jason, is, okay, we're doing obviously your typical lunch and learns where we get partners to come in. I'm wondering how long that lasts, how often is too often, so that we don't lose that motivation that I can feel amongst the team currently around having partners in and learning about their solutions. There's at the moment a lot of hype around that. Oh, this is amazing, this can help my merchants. But I'm wondering, apart from lunch and learns, what different things can we do and at what cadence to maintain that momentum?
The first question I'd have is, who are the bulk of your partners? Are these SIs that have D2C merchants as their clients, or is it the D2C clients themselves that are your partners. And so you're enabling them and educating them on the services you provide and how you can help them and benefit them and integrate them more deeply into their businesses. What is the makeup of your current partner ecosystem, and what does that even look like in terms of enablement and services layer?
Yeah, for sure. So twofold. What I'm getting at here is more with our tech partners, the likes of your Globalees, maybe some different Shopify apps, pieces like that, where we really think they can add value to our merchants. So they're coming in. We had Globally in yesterday, and it went really well. Obviously, there's heaps and heaps of tech partners that can do lots of wonderful things. The second side is obviously I will go and do enablement for our agencies, and we can probably get onto that as a whole nother topic. But at this one, it's talking about tech partners coming in to talk to my team and how we can manage that to ensure that they're not overloaded by all the partners and all the art of the possible.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's going to have to be two-way partnerships, meaning that sure, it's great to educate your partners about what you do, how you do it, the value you bring, the value you provide to their customers who are these D2C brands. But where I think the value is a two-way street and where you create a loop of value is where you start getting feedback from these partners about how your service can be improved or expanded. Or I think you have to create an environment where instead of it's you're teaching, they're learning, you have to create opportunities for them to teach and you to learn. So whether that is you're doing lunch and learns where it's 100% focused on partners doing the talking, doing the presentations, sharing with you, I think you have to create an environment where it's a circular partnership, right? And so that to me feels like something that partners or vendors are oftentimes really bad at. They're good at pushing out content and creating content for their partners, but they're not great at creating an environment for their partners to give feedback to them. And I think that is something that I see lacking in almost every single technical partnership that I have.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that actually, to give you a bit more context about what I'm trying to do with those agencies beyond just lunch and learns, is trying to create a model or a partner program that isn't just based off obviously them referring us work, trying to create billable hours for them to provide in the pre-sale process for us, whether that be like consultants, like bringing them into it, like yourself even, to be agnostic, and that is literally handing them work, or whether it be agencies or consultants post-sale helping us with a list of 10 tasks in the onboarding phase that maybe the merchant would typically do, but they could charge the merchant for. So that, in my mind, that's a way that I can provide value to the partner beyond a referral fee. I guess my question to you, as someone who might fill that role, as a consultant, as someone who's lived in the agency world for a long time as well, like, how do you make that compelling enough? Is 5 hours of work during onboarding compelling? How do you really sell that to someone in your shoes?
I think it's a little bit different to SIs versus myself because I'm charging a fixed consulting fee monthly. So it's a consulting as a service fee. So it's not like I can charge more hours if I deliver more services because it's all part of my consulting as a service offering. Yeah. But what the form of partnership from a commercial perspective that usually takes for me is an ongoing rev share of any referred customers. Yeah. So saying, look, okay, I'm going to get 5%, 10%, whatever it is of ongoing rev share of any volume or any revenue that gets put through you accrues back to me effectively as a commission for sending you lead. Because if you have to go out there and you have to secure customers, you're going to be spending more than that to go and acquire a customer anyway. And so if you can have it on a platter teed up for you and it's a good fit, and it makes sense to recommend you, then I'm going to recommend you. And I think that most SIs and consultants that have scruples will feel the same. They're going to recommend the best solution for their customer, regardless of how good or bad the commercial benefit is to them. But I think for SIs, you're absolutely right. The more things that you can effectively deliver on their behalf that they can charge for, the better it is for them. So if you say, look, there's an onboarding package here that is a 20-hour onboarding package that typically covers soup to nuts, covers from initial scoping to integration to maybe, because in your world, we don't just need to integrate with ecom. We usually need to integrate with the ERP as well. So we're going to be pulling down orders regardless of channel. So whether it's coming through social channels, whether it's coming through Amazon, whether it's coming through wherever, if we're fulfilling all orders and we're also shipping out potentially inventory to FBA locations on your behalf too, to keep them topped up for you to fulfill your Amazon orders. Now we need to pull down orders from your OMS or your ERP or your WMS or whatever it is if they run a hybrid operation, because a lot of brands will run a hybrid operation. They'll have a small warehouse of their own, but then they'll also work with a 3PL in specific target regions where they don't want to have an owned warehouse yet.
Yeah.
And so I think integrations in your world are the most important partnerships you have, and they're also the most complex to get up and running with a new brand that you take on. Let's say there's a bundle of 20 hours, professional services hours from your side that onboards a customer into your ecosystem, that you do all the work or you do 90% of the heavy lifting, but the agency can actually charge the merchant and they can be effectively back-to-back that. Well, that is an instant value add for the agency, because I don't know a single agency that doesn't love being able to charge for services that they don't have to deliver. That's great.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I hadn't really dug that deep, to be honest. I was looking at, and because that, in theory, that solves the issue which I'm currently facing, which is I speak to the onboarding team and they're up for it. We've gone through and we've said, cool, these are the typical gaps that the merchant would do. Therefore, the agency could take it on. But what you're suggesting there is actually one step further. It's like, we still do all of our bits, and it's it doesn't get in the way of that, but perhaps the agency is able to charge for that. It's an interesting idea. How transparent would that be to the merchant? Like, how obvious would that be in your mind?
It doesn't need, whatever commercials are behind the scenes on that. Like, I'm working with a new, relatively new B2B commerce platform vendor who is not a household name yet, but they want to become a household name. And one of the go-to-market plans that we're putting together to onboard SIs into our platform, because we're not a household name yet, it's a little bit of a punt. It's a little bit of a risk for an SI to take on this new platform vendor that doesn't have necessarily, we're not going to be showering them with leads, a Shopify would, for example. We have to have something differentiated. So what we're doing is we're putting together a plan where the very first implementation and the first lead, we will not only send you the opportunity, but we will do the full onboarding and implementation of the platform and the system integration. But the SI gets to charge, they get to basically put that proposal to the customer, they're selling it into the customer. They get the customer to say yes and agree to have them as the SI, and they get to charge their normal delivery fee. But behind the scenes, we're actually doing the first build out, the first system integration, the first full delivery end to end. We're actually doing it behind the scenes. They shadow us to onboard them into the platform, to get their tech teams up to speed, to develop their implementation playbooks, all that sort of stuff. We're doing that as a form of enablement for the SI, where they make all the money. So I don't know, whatever their normal fee would be, maybe it's $100,000 or whatever it is for a build, for a standard theme-based build, whatever it might be. They get to still charge that to the merchant, but we do all the heavy lift. We do 100% of the implementation with them shadowing us so that they build out their capability on the platform. And so this type of approach, when you are still, I obviously don't know how well-known you guys are and how many partners you have, but it's irrelevant. If you're looking at onboarding new partners and you're looking at enabling them anyway and spending money to enable them, why wouldn't you just cover the cost and complexity of onboarding as part of that engagement process and let them make the money on the back end of that?
Yeah, totally. Do you anticipate that could have a negative impact on our conversions? If we are, at the moment we're doing that all for free, essentially. We onboard the customer ourselves, and there's no friction in the sales process around that. But if you're suddenly now on top of the fees that we're going to charge, which for 3PLs aren't insignificant, you're talking about the SaaS fee plus the logistics, and it's quite complex anyway. As soon as you potentially add another 20 hours on there for onboarding from a third party, by the way, does it just get in the way and they look at one of our competitors that maybe is less pricey to even onboard with? Because
Okay, so I misunderstood. I thought that you already charged an onboarding fee, but you don't. Okay, in that scenario, as long as you've got a healthy commercial benefit for those brands to work with you, or those SIs to work with you, or whoever it is that's doing the technical implementation alongside you. Is there is a clear and present commercial benefit for them in doing so? Then I think you're probably covering that base. But it's more along the lines of, because sometimes SIs, even if you would normally onboard them for free, there's usually either some component that they need to own anyway. So let's say hypothetically, they're managing the iPaaS platform for those brands, right? Or internally, those brands have an iPaaS platform that their IT team is managing. Normally, you're going to have to hook into that, or you're going to have to build a direct integration with their WMS or their OMS or their ERP or something like that. And so there's usually work in there for the SI to do anyway, usually. There will be certain things, yes, you can do, but there will be certain things that only the SI can do to get them up and running on your platform. So there maybe is some form of, I don't know if you charge, in that scenario, let's say the SI is doing the integration via iPaaS to your platform. Do you guys charge like a technical consulting fee to the SIs typically for that?
So I didn't want to stop you, because I actually think what you're saying is completely relevant to 90% of cases. To our strategy here is that our product team builds all of the integrations direct. So I'm just limiting options, and that was actually my last point that I wanted to talk about today anyways. Product team is amazing. We are building a truly world-class tech to support our logistics services. But if we're honest, at some point it does actually conflict with the realm of possibilities when it comes to partnerships. So because we build all of our integrations in-house, that means I can't work with SIs in the way that you've described that I would say is relevant for 90% of use cases or 90% of partner managers. Similarly, there are heaps of cool product features that are on our roadmap that actually partners do. So typically, I would work with partners to solve those issues. Then you can create a two-way flow of leads there, but not for us. We're building this, again, world-class tech that does this bit. So suddenly it's competitive with some of our partners or potential partners. So to answer your question, we don't charge for that because we build it all ourselves, and there's not really a relationship with SIs, although you've given me some ideas to ponder. And the second part, as I say, is actually, okay, we're building features. How would you build partnerships with partners that I know we're probably going to compete with in the future for the interim? Or would you avoid those? Or it comes back to the same question with me always, how do you communicate that with partners? Knowing that we may step on their toes in 6 months or a year.
I think as long as all of those features and functions are API first or API capable, and that means that then if they want to integrate you using, instead of point-to-point integrations, because once you get to a certain scale as a brand, you need an integration middleware platform that is the traffic cop of all integrations in the business, right? Whether it's a Celigo, whether it's a Patchworks, whether it's a Linworks, whether it's a Jitterbit, there's 100 different iPaaS platforms out there, and MuleSoft, whatever it might be. Most brands, when they get to say $50 million or more, they will onboard some kind of integration middleware platform in their business. And so if that's the kind of scale of businesses, $50 million and above brands that you're really targeting, because that's when they really start having massive logistical challenges globally, and that's where you're probably a great fit. What I would say is you probably need to think about, instead of building out these point-to-point integrations with NetSuite, for example, or with D365 or with ERPs or OMSs, instead of building out integrations with those, I would focus my integration firepower on the middleware platforms themselves. So I'd say build an integration with Make, build an integration with Zapier, build an integration with Patchworks, build an integration, become an endpoint, a default endpoint of these middleware platforms that own the brand space, that are already working with all the key retail brands that you want to integrate with. It's great that you've got your own middleware platform. It's great that you've got your own endpoints that you support. That's fantastic. And for brands that don't already have middleware in the business, that's fantastic. Where, for example, their SI has built out all these individual point-to-point integrations using something like AWS, Lambda, whatever, this custom middleware, in those scenarios, you fit in really well. But where they've got an out-of-the-box, like iPaaS platform, it would be great if you were a default endpoint in those platforms to where it was just easy to switch on you guys as an endpoint supplier.
Totally. Yeah, I get that. And that's my background over the last few years anyway. It's an interesting conversation that's ongoing, to be honest with you, right? And I think you hit it on the head. ICP for the moment probably is right in that 5 to 50 million bracket, which is actually why we're well placed. We can handle absolutely everything. But it would be interesting when we started to look at brands that are pushing higher, and there are some that we serve absolutely, how that plays out. Yeah, I guess it's more of a broader strategy piece from the business rather than myself just saying, cool, I'm going to go and make random integrations or expose our endpoints to patchworks, for example.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you want to have that needs to be understood to be important to the leadership team. Otherwise, they won't allocate the right resources to that. The integrations team in-house might feel threatened by that, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we don't want us going off as a partnership team. We don't want to be going off down these rabbit holes that are diametrically opposed to the strategic direction of the business.
Exactly.
So I think, yes, having that conversation with the leadership is going to be really important for you, because in my opinion, it's the biggest opportunity you have to expand your market share. Because if you're an out-of-the-box plug-and-play endpoint for Patchworks, if you're an out-of-the-box plug-and-play endpoint for Make or Celigo or whatever the major players in the space in region, because there's also another, I forget what they're called. There's a really popular iPaaS in Europe. It's just slipped my mind. But there's a couple that are really super popular in Europe that are not popular in North America. But I think if you can have a strategic partnership with them that makes it literally drop dead easy to flick you on as an endpoint for them, wow, that opens up crazy opportunities for you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 100%. And it will be an interesting conversation to approach with the business and, as you say, the internal stakeholders. I think we have a great thing going with the product team, and they are really impressive. So it's really key to make sure that we're not stepping on anyone's toes, that we're not clashing, most importantly, and that it's aligned with the long-term strategy.
Totally. And I don't think necessarily that capability would ever go away in the business. I think you're always going to need it for two reasons. One is there's always going to be those custom integration scenarios where you need to be directly integrated with endpoints and OMSs and ERPs. So that's always going to be a need in the business. But also, when you're building out those integrations with middleware platforms, you still need to build that. You still need to maintain it. You still need to deal with their tech teams as they upgrade their platforms. They're still you still need that capability in the business. So I'm not suggesting for a moment that team wouldn't continue to be pivotally important to the business. I'm just saying that their focus might change slightly, or they might have an additional focus to what their current focus is. So they actually might become more important to the business rather than less important to the business over time.
Yeah, for sure. No, I would totally agree with that.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.